Hello everyone, my name is Ben Eady and I'm the Online Media Manager for ModernAnalyst.com, the premier online community for business analysts. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar titled Deliver Maximum Value Through Better Business Analysis. Today's featured speaker is John Parker from Enfocus Solutions Incorporated. The webinar will last approximately 60 minutes, including the Q&A session. So make sure to submit your questions in advance using the questions feature on the webinar software. I'd also like to say thank you to Enfocus for sponsoring this event. And at this time, I'll turn it over to John to get us started. John?
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. First of all, I want to welcome everybody to our webinar today. We have a lot of information to go over, so we'll get started. Okay. The problem today is that most IT projects deliver little or no business value. This is actually caused by a lot of different things. But first of all, we're going to look at really the evidence that basically supports this premise. First of all, there's too many failed or challenged projects. There's significant functionality that's developed but never used. And projects seldom deliver benefits identified in the business case. If you look at the project success rates, there's a company called Standish, and they put out a chaos report. And basically, this is their most recent statistics. What they show is that of all major IT, and their survey consists of about 8,000 projects, by the way, 24% of those projects outright failed, 32% were successful, and 44% were challenged. Okay, this is kind of interesting. You would expect these numbers to maybe improve a little bit over the last 2 years, but in essence, they really didn't. If you look at it, what they call a successful project is a project that was completed on time, on budget, with all the features and functions. A challenge project is one that was completed but were over budget, or really lacked some of the original functionality, and then a project impaired or failed was basically the project was abandoned or canceled at some point. Okay, so the original study really showed that in 1994 that only 16% of all projects were successful. Okay, I showed you the other one that we really haven't improved upon that. However, if you take agile projects out of the picture and you just look at waterfall projects, you'll actually see that the numbers have actually decreased. Okay, this is somewhat surprising to me because we put a lot of emphasis on project management and project management certification, everything like that over the last year. So you would at least expect to see some improvement, but really it hasn't. The big improvements have really resulted from adopting agile. Okay, but it really kind of gets worse. If you look at the successful projects, the projects below would have actually been considered successful under the way that Chaos or Standish actually measured it. You could actually have a solution that was ultimately not used and withdrawn because of lack of user adoption. You could have a solution that did not deliver on the business case. You could have a solution that did not deliver any expected benefits, or a solution that actually had poor usability, poor performance, or high error rates. All of these, if they were delivered on time, on budget, and with all scope, would have been considered successful projects. In my mind, these are not successful. If you look at waste, this is another interesting thing. We develop a lot, and we spend a lot of time developing functionality that's never used. In fact, another report put out by Standish Group at an XP conference basically showed that 45% of all functionality is never used. Okay, now this is bad enough in the fact that we're wasting all these resources, but it really gets worse because if we develop this functionality, we actually have to maintain it too. So our ongoing cost of maintaining software continues to go up. This is a little bit disconcerting. Okay, if you look at the benefits, this is basically what people think of IT projects. Okay, if you look at Management Today, actually had a quote: 78% of information system projects fail to realize even 50% of the original identified benefits. Only 40% of CFOs find that their IT investments are producing the returns they expected, and 30 to 40% systems to support business change deliver no benefit whatsoever. This is pretty sad in terms of our industry. If you look at the culprit, I believe the culprit is basically poor business analysis. I think it's at the root of most project failures. Poor business analysis really stems from having poor requirements, poor communications between business and development teams, okay, business cases that are only used for funding but never really looked at again, low business analysis maturity levels in most organizations, and then frankly, there's just a lot of tools that basically support business analysis. There's a lot of tools that support requirement But as you're going to see, there's very few that actually support business analysis itself. Okay, Standish in the 2011 report, the top 3 reasons they gave for challenge projects were lack of user input, incomplete requirements, and changing requirements. All of these are symptoms of poor business analysis. You don't see on there, for instance, poor business analysis or poor project management or lack of executive support like you saw in the past. What you see are basically symptoms of poor business analysis. Okay, another company, IAG Consulting, if you look at the cost of business analysis or poor business analysis, it's staggering. Okay, companies with poor business analysis capability have 3 times as many project failures as successes. Notice also, 68% of companies are more likely to have a marginal project or outright failure, okay, than a success due to the way they approach business analysis. You can look at these numbers and you can see that the cost of business analysis is staggering. Improving this, the results are significantly better in terms of the bottom line and in terms of successful projects. Okay, business analysis, though, is a lot more than just defining requirements. Business analysis involves planning the solution. In other words, determining the business case, defining business requirements, defining the solution scope, eliciting stakeholder needs, and of course, developing requirements like I said before. It also involves, monitoring how those requirements are used during solution delivery. That means assessing and validating the solution, defining transition requirements of how we're going to transition to this new solution, and engaging stakeholders. And then really, last but not least, after the solution has been implemented, it means going back and making sure that we realize the benefits. These 3 tasks together basically make up comprehensive business analysis. So again, business analysis is much more than requirements. If you look at it from a BABOK or IBA view, it consists of enterprise analysis, organizational process change, and managing delivery of value. So there's a lot of activities here. Okay. One of the things to note is that a business analyst role is really starting to evolve. In the early days, organizations that have low business analysis maturity, you see a business analyst really being nothing more than just kind of a requirements writer. Sometimes they're more like a systems analyst or whatever. What we're really seeing is this role is really starting to change and become much more strategic. Business analysts today, they're much more business-oriented than IT-oriented. They understand how the business operates, and they understand enough about IT to know how to apply that and help that organization improve its business processes or gain a competitive advantage. They're generally very good communicators. They understand that people are very important in terms of making these solutions work. I will tell you that IBA is getting ready to come out with version 3 of the BABOK. When this comes out, it's actually changing dramatically. It's kind of based on this change framework where you have needs, changes, solutions, context, values, and stakeholders. Okay, I love this, frankly. I think this is going to make a huge difference. Okay, it's not going to be quite as much on requirements as it was in the past. It's really much more on defining a solution that, by understanding the needs of the stakeholder that, it's within a certain context and how to deliver value to the business. This is going to make a huge difference. I think we're going to see the number of challenge and fail projects in the future fail by simply really understanding, and looking at it from this dimension. Okay, one of the things is there's really a lack of business analysis tools on the market. There's a lot of tools, tons of tools. In fact, if you look at requirements management tools, there's probably 40 or 50 of those. Portfolio management tools, there's at least 15 or 20 of those that I know about. Project management, I'm not sure I could even count. IT service management, a lot of people are really moving into this space. Of course, agile development's really becoming big, and then there's a lot of application lifecycle management tools. Okay, generally to do business analysis, it takes a little bit of all of these tools. And a lot of organizations, they still use Microsoft Word and SharePoint. That is using that. Those are good, very good tools for word processing and very good really for collaboration. But I think in terms of using it for business analysis, it would be like using a hammer and screwdriver to construct a skyscraper. They really simply don't work. Let's look at requirements management, because a lot of people really consider that they think they have business analysis covered by having a requirements management tool. Wrong, they really do not. If you look at what business analysis is, it involves preparing problem statements, business cases, understanding constraints, assumptions, being able to define transition requirements and things. If you look at requirements development, it's actually fairly small on this list. Business analysis is much more, and basically what is needed is a good tool that can do all business analysis and not just requirements and not some part of it. We don't really need that fragmentation, and that's really what's causing, I think, a lot of confusion in the industry. Okay, first of all, we're going to take a poll now, and I'm going to ask you what tool do you use for business analysis activities, whether you use Microsoft Word, Excel, or SharePoint, whether you use a simple requirements management tool, or whether you use a comprehensive business analysis solution or something else. So let's go ahead and take that poll, Ben. Okay, if you look at this thing, it looks like this audience is using a lot of Microsoft Word, Excel, or SharePoint. 2% use a comprehensive business analysis tool, and 12% is a simple requirements tools. Actually, the poll's closed. If you look at it, we count with 79% are using Microsoft Word or Excel, 13% are using a simple requirements tool, and 2% are using a comprehensive business analysis tool, and 6% is using really something else. Microsoft Word and Excel are great. I will tell you, though, that they really don't work too well for business analysis. Business analysis is much more data intensive. It's not document intensive. It really means, okay, knowing your requirements, tracing them through, defining different types of requirements, understanding life cycle events, preparing business cases, and really kind of being able to link all this stuff together. It seems to be a lot more data intensive. Okay, now let's move to delivering maximum value. Okay, let's look at really what business value is, since that's really the purpose of the seminar. Okay, and we're going to use kind of a balanced scorecard way of looking at business value. The balanced scorecard was put out by a Harvard professor, and it's a great tool to use, and I kind of recommend everybody use it. But if you look at it, it makes you look at things from a financial perspective, a stakeholder perspective, an internal business process perspective, and a learning and growth perspective. So the financial perspective really means that, okay, the value has to deliver a positive return on investment for the stakeholders by increasing revenues and decreasing cost. Okay, the stakeholder perspective, sometimes called the customer perspective, means satisfying the needs of the internal and external stakeholders. Okay, the internal business process perspective means improving performance by reducing cycle times, eliminating waste, avoiding defects, increasing efficiency, and spending less time on non-value added activities. And of course, learning and growth means helping users or stakeholders adopt the solution, resulting in increased skills or higher employee satisfaction or whatever. Okay, this is really what I'm talking about when I'm talking about business values, kind of addressing these 4 dimensions. Okay, so we're going to look at 7 techniques to really deliver more value. We're going to look at the business case, requirements, collaboration, okay, solution, defining the solution scope, stakeholder analysis, benefits realization management, and portfolio management. Okay? Before, a lot of people manage the success of a project as saying, okay, the ultimate success of a project involves much more than just delivering solution on time, on budget, and with all planned scope. That's the way chaos may determine a successful project. I think a better way to measure it would be is whether the business benefits as proposed during the initial business case were achieved. Because the goal of business analysts, our goal is to really help that we deliver, and really any project, or really a project manager, is basically to deliver value to the business and make sure that we achieve the expected results in the business case. So if you look at delivering value, it kind of occurs at different times. Okay, this particular diagram was put together by a company called Panorama Consulting. They're pretty much a leader in ERP systems, but I love this because it really does kind of show you, value. So if you look at value, this can really be applied to any project. Like I said, they pretty much applied it to the ERP space, but it's perfect. There's basically pre-solution, implementation, and post-implementation. So pre-solution, our big thing is to make sure that we understand the problem and make sure that we develop a business case, okay, that shows so that we can set a vision in terms of where we want to go. Okay, so we need to understand where we're at today, which is kind of our baseline, and really where we want to go and why we want to undertake this project. Now, when we're actually in implementation, okay, there's 2 things that we want to do. Number 1, okay, we want to shorten the development cycle, which is key, and that's really the time from the time that we start the project to the time we deliver value. And of course, when you first implement a new solution, there's always like mass confusion. There's always like this dip in productivity. So what we want to do is kind of minimize that dip of productivity, that little trough at the bottom that says minimize. And we want to shorten this timeline. And of course, then what we want to do is reach our business case delta as quick as we possibly can, and we'll continue to maximize after that. So this is really a very good model basically for achieving value. By the way, everybody, this presentation will be available later. We actually have the presentation for download available on our website later. So if you're taking a lot of notes, you don't have to, but you do listen to this. Okay, so let's start with the business case. Some people many organizations now are using business cases and things like that. Some people, they just kind of think they have to do it to get funding or whatever. But a business case is a lot more. It should be a living document. It even should have, change control over it. Because when you use a business case, you should use it to not only get your funding, you should use it during the project to make sure that you're understanding and achieving, what's expected in the business case. And then, of course, use it after the project's been implemented to make sure that you actually achieve the value. So in terms of delivering more value, this is basically the essential first step. Okay, so if you look at this next slide, these are various life cycles. There's like a development life cycle here, and there's a project life cycle or whatever. But if you look at the very top where it says traditional business case usage, about the second line down, normally it's only used in terms of getting approval. So it's kind of like it's done after the solution, kind of know what we want it to do. We kind of know what the benefits are, and we basically use it to get an approval. If you look at the very bottom line, really a business case should be used a lot more. In fact, best practice would really be to use it from the very beginning. We want to make it earlier, okay, even the traditional business use case, because we want to start with that. We want to continue to keep that in mind because we're doing the project to deliver and maximize value. And then we basically want to use that business case all the way through the time that we actually retire the system. So like in ITIL, this would pretty much be a cradle to grave approach. You'd want the business case to be part of planning, and you want it to be really part of retirement of the solution itself. But by doing this and knowing what our measures are going to be, we're going to get more value simply because we're measuring things. Okay, so now that we have a business case in place, let's look at requirements. Okay, requirements are kind of interesting. Requirements are basically three perspectives that we have to address when we define good requirements. The first one is the business perspective. Okay, what business needs must be satisfied? What metrics identify that the project is successful? Okay, the next one is kind of the customer user perspective. Okay, what problems need to be solved and how will users interact with the solution? Very important, because if the users don't feel like their needs are being met, they're not going to adopt the system. You can develop the best solution in the world, but if the customers don't want it or the users don't want it, it's not going to be successful. Then, of course, the technical perspective, because we have to give the people that are going to build it the requirements so they know how to build it. So they have to understand it, and they have to really make sure that they understand it enough to make sure that they can build the right solution. So a lot of organizations, they focus only on this last one, just in terms of the technical perspective. It's really not right. You really have to make sure that you understand customer user perspective and the business perspective, because as we said, the number one cause of project failure is the lack of user input, which is the customer user perspective. And of course, since we're talking about value, you have to understand the business perspective to get that. So not addressing all three of these perspectives will result in a suboptimal solution. Now, if you go to BABOK, okay, in IBA's business analysis book of knowledge, they actually list 5 types of requirements. It's kind of interesting. They list business requirements. Okay, business requirements deal with kind of high level. What does the business expect to achieve, and why would the business undertake this project? In other words, what return are they expecting? Okay, and then there's stakeholder requirements, and stakeholder requirements basically are what do the users need in their own words to relieve their pain and to help them perform their activities better. Then there's 2 types of solution requirements, which are functional and non-functional, which is kind of our traditional requirements. The system shall do this, or we also have performance, which are not non-functional requirements. And then the last type is transition requirements, and this basically is what does it take to basically transition to this new solution. Okay, now if you look at most requirement management tools on the market, they only address the functional and non-functional. And I will tell you, if your requirement tool does that, you really need to find a different tool. And let's look at why. If you're not addressing business requirements, you're not really addressing value, business value. You're not really addressing business needs. So probably your project sponsor is not going to be very happy when you deliver a suboptimal solution that delivers minimal value. If you're not delivering stakeholder requirements, then why are we doing it anyhow? If they don't adopt the system, or it's not really built for them, or they don't feel like they're part of it, then that's why projects fail. That's the #1 source of project failures. Solution requirements, yeah, the technical people have to understand that. Those have to be written very well, but you have to kind of address the first two, because those you don't just do without understanding the business or what the stakeholders need. And then a lot of systems fail because we don't define transition requirements. This is how we're going to move to this new solution. So make sure that if you have a requirements tool, if you're defining requirements, that you address all 5 of these, because all 5 of them are basically needed to control project cost, to improve project success, and deliver more value to the business. Okay, so if you look at this thing, going back to my curve that Panorama did, business requirements basically maximize business value. Stakeholder requirements achieve user adoption and minimize post-implementation productivity drop. Solution requirements shorten delivery cycle and eliminate waste through less rework and prioritization. And the transition requirements minimize the post-implementation productivity drop and also help you, reach that business case delta quicker. So all of these types of requirements are very much needed, and you can see kind of how they fit into this value curve. Okay, this is also interesting too. If you look at why you need good requirements, you really need them for quality and cost savings. According to BAME, as much as a 200-to-1 cost savings results from finding errors in the requirement stage versus finding errors in the maintenance stage of the software lifecycle. And 56% of all bugs can be traced to errors made during the requirement stage. So basically, spending a little bit more time in requirements, there's a good payback for the business. Okay, if you look at requirements maturity, let's go back to one of IAG's report. They actually came up with a report called the Business Analysis Benchmark of 2009. What they showed was that if you had better requirements maturity, you could improve on-time performance in technology projects. For companies that did, they increased by 161%. They could reduce time overruns on projects by 87%. They could improve average on-budget performance for technology projects by just over 95%. They reduced their budget overruns by just under 75%. This is huge. So you were going back to those Standish things. We've been placing all this emphasis basically on project management, which I'm not saying we don't need, but it really has had no payback. If you just look at the outcomes haven't shown that it's had a good payback. Agile's had a payback, but really not the emphasis in project management. If we replace more emphasis on business analysis, I guarantee you, I think we could have a lot better payback according to the research that's out there. Okay, so let's look at collaboration. I've talked about this quite a bit, but the lack of user input is the #1 cause of project failures. What we need to do is we need our technical people and our business people to communicate better. So this is, having better collaboration really helps. But I'm not just saying this. Let's actually look at some of the numbers here. Well, this is an interesting report because this basically shows joint responsibility for requirements and what a difference that can make. Okay, so if you look at this, the first column, the first row kind of shows what IT is responsible for developing requirements, and the business just participates. Okay, the second one basically shows the business is responsible for the requirements. Maybe the business analyst is located in the business and they develop the requirements, and then the last one's kind of jointly owned. But if you look at it, the budget as a percentage of target, look how much it improved, when the requirements were jointly owned. Look at the time that dropped. Look at functionality. The one that's really the most surprising to me, though, is the stakeholder time. How much, they actually tracked how much time, the stakeholders had to spend on the project. Notice when the requirements were jointly owned, they actually had to spend less time. Pretty interesting. Very good payback here. Okay, so, engage your stakeholders. That's all I can say is, one of the things we have in Focus Solutions, we actually have a thing called the stakeholder perspective, and it's kind of a whole methodology of how to get your stakeholders involved in the project. So we give you a lot of tasks. And by the way, this is downloadable. So after this, I think we're sending everybody an email that's participated. Well, actually, I would encourage you to kind of download this because this gives you a lot of good ideas of how to get your stakeholders engaged in your project. But basically, it talks about things they need to do, like their responsibilities to learn the background and purpose of the project, or what do they need to document and express their needs, and how can they express their needs? How do they document business rules and gathering relevant background information that's needed? So this is kind of a list of things for them to participate. It's actually a fairly large document. It's about 60 pages, but it is downloadable, and we've made that available really to you for participating. Okay, let's move on to solution scope. And working with business analysts, and project managers, frankly, I've seen a lot of confusion here. There's actually two types of scope. There's project scope and there's solution scope. Project scope is prepared by the project manager, and this really includes the work that's needed to create a product or deliver a service or a result. Generally, it's built around what deliverables the project's going to produce. Solution scope's quite a bit different. It really describes the characteristics, features, or functions of the product or service to be built. Okay, and it's normally done by the business analyst or somebody serving in the business analysis role. Okay, normally the solution scope's done first because before you can really put together a meaningful project plan, you kind of need to know what you're going to do and what's in and out of scope of the solution. So that's the difference between these two. Okay, so why is it important? Okay, well, first of all, it consists of high-level features of the proposed solution. Okay, and these features that are defined in the solution scope, they can be prioritized based on business value. Okay, these features are also a very good way in terms of how you want to elicit requirements from your stakeholders, and so use these features then to for elicitation purposes. And so instead of giving stakeholders a whole bunch of them at one time, take the high business value features, elicit requirements on those, and then give it to like an agile development team to basically be able to build the solution. Okay, using features significantly reduces solution scope creep. Okay, it's also highly beneficial for both agile and waterfall projects. I've actually done a lot of training in agile. I've worked a lot with agile teams. We use agile in our company. I will tell you, starting off with features, and features in agile can either be called features or they can be called epics sometimes. Then we take an epic, we break it into user stories. These help a lot. And so basically the bottom line is managing features really equates to managing business value. Okay, let's look at stakeholder analysis because this is a real key part of business analysis. And oftentimes, people get really confused when they try to elicit needs from stakeholders. You tell somebody, what do you need or what do you want? A lot of times they can't really tell you, and that's proven. I mean, it's not actually. There's been a lot of studies on that. If you just start and say, what do you need the system to do? People really struggle with it. At least the vast majority of people. Well, one of the things is that it's a lot easier to understand what somebody does and what the problems are, and that's really a much better way to really kind of approach stakeholders. But the other thing is that when you're approaching stakeholders, you have to look at it, okay, if you can help these people in terms of relieving a pain, like a problem, or you can help these people in terms of creating a gain, such as they have more time for coffee or whatever it is, that you'll have much better adoption of the system really by taking those two methods. So it's very important really to identify and understand your users. Okay, so one of the best ways is actually to start off with what's called a persona. This is used a lot in Agile. It's also used in user-centered design. But actually, take a persona, and a persona is a fictitious person that defines. It's a fictitious person basically that describes like a type or a class of users. Normally, it would describe things such as what are their responsibilities, what systems and services do they use, kind of what hours do they work, etc. Okay. Now the next thing is basically now that you have these personas created, the best thing is the next thing is to understand what do these people do and what are their problems. Okay, and the best way to do this in terms of capturing or listening needs is to use scenarios. If you think about it, people can normally tell you their problems, and they can even describe their problem in a scenario. They can describe what causes the problem, or they can describe what's the cause, the result, or whatever. And they can also describe what they do. So if you look at scenarios, there's pretty much three different types. There's a problem scenario, which describes the problems. There's an activity scenario that describes how users perform their daily work. And there's an interaction scenario, which is often done by like user experience, a user-centered design specialist. Okay, this pretty much says how the users can interact with the system. Okay, so business analysts, they can read these scenarios and then they can start putting together a set of requirements, okay, based on these. They can also go on these things and they can kind of look at, okay, how is this solution going to be a pain reliever or a gain creator? So these are really a very good starting point using personas and scenarios in terms of how to define good business requirements. And that actually helps really deliver a lot of value. Okay, so moving on to the next one, which is benefits realization management. And in BABOK, this might be called, this would be like one of the tasks of what's called solution assessment and validation. But if you look at this thing, what are the key reasons expected benefits are not achieved? Well, there's a lot of them. First of all, maybe the business problem was poorly defined, giving rise to a flawed business case. The business case was poorly developed and established an incorrect or unrealistic expectation. I've seen that happen time and time again. Requirements for the solution were inaccurate, incomplete, or poorly defined. We know kind of the impact of poor requirements. The delivery of the solution was poorly executed. That was pretty much the project team failed, or the technical solution that was designed was fundamentally flawed. Maybe that's an architectural problem. Or the delivered solution was not effectively adopted by the business. That happens a lot because we didn't do enough organizational change. And the business changed significantly between inception and project completion. So this is pretty much why business benefits are not achieved. If you look at business benefits, okay, you almost have to look at like a value index. You have to look at what are the business benefits I received divided by what's the solution cost, okay? And it kind of gives you like a ratio. So obviously you want business benefits received to be maximized, and you want solution costs to be minimized to the extent possible. But obviously what you want to see is this value index, or kind of more like a return on investment, go up. So benefits realization management is really key. And benefits realization management pretty much occurs, it's pretty much making this commitment that we're going to achieve our benefits. You achieve the benefits by delivering the solution. And then after the solution is delivered, you go back and optimize things. And you're going to find that this has a gigantic payback. So we start benefits realization by just making sure we have a realistic benefit, a realistic business case. Benefits don't just happen, by the way. A lot of people would just say, well, we're going to achieve these benefits and because they're in the business case or because somebody said so. That's not true. You have to go out and manage and make sure that you manage and obtain and harvest your benefits. Otherwise, they just don't happen. Benefits realization really has its own life cycle. It's much bigger than a project because the project kind of ends maybe 30 or 90 days after we deliver the solution. We're on to the next, a lot of people are kind of on to the next project or whatever. However, it's that period, and maybe the first 1, 2, or 3 years that we really harvest these benefits. And oftentimes, people implement workarounds, they put up roadblocks, they complain, it's that type of stuff. So it's really optimizing all that really helps achieve a lot more benefits. Benefits rarely happen according to plan. It just, we'd like for them to. We'd like to say, okay, we're going to achieve X amount of dollars in the first year and X amount in the second year. We can have a plan. It really doesn't happen that way. You have to really kind of manage these things. And I will tell you, benefits realization is a process. Okay, you have to manage this process like any other business process. So in terms of like benefits realization management, it kind of goes into something like this. So we start with a solution, and we have a thing called solution planning, which we basically put together the business case. We determine what the benefits are, how we're going to measure them. Then we have solution delivery, and this is really making sure that we're delivering the most valuable stuff to the business. We're kind of taking out this waste, we're controlling our cost. As we deliver things to the business, we're trying to get them to accept it, buy in, be a transition requirements. And then we have this benefits realization cycle where we basically, after the system's implemented, we go back and we make certain adjustments either to optimize the business process or optimize people's roles and responsibility of how they use it. And of course, we do that through a review. We go back and improve things, and then we may have to go back to maybe another solution or whatever. Because benefits realization goes all the way really through disposal. So benefits realization really involves validating and revalidating the business case. Remember, the business case kind of lives on. Right? We want to be living. We create benefits realization accountability. Somebody has to be responsible. It doesn't just happen. Number, we put together a plan in terms of how often we're going to measure, who's going to be part of that measurement team. We then do the measurements at the key points, and then identify problems and document solutions to those problems, and then just continually optimize process, organization, and technology to achieve benefits. Sometimes maybe we missed a requirement, and we have to go back and fix something in the solution itself. Maybe we needed to make an organizational change to optimize something to make it work better. Maybe we needed to change some type of rule or procedure or whatever. But the big thing is to measure these benefits and even create like a benefits dashboard and have everybody see that they're accountable and responsible for this. Okay, so we're going to take a poll now. I want to try to find out how many organizations currently do benefits realization management. So the question here is you do it for every project, you never do it, or is you just do it just occasionally for high-profile projects? So let's go ahead and take this poll. Okay, let's look at the results that we have. What we have now is that, okay, benefits realization and management, according to this group, which is several hundred people, Fortune 500, 7% of you said you do it for every project, 41% said you never do it, and 52% said you only occasionally do it for high-profile projects. So 7% only do it for, so if you look at it in terms of people that either do it, sometimes about 59% of you said that you do it sometimes, and 41% said they never do it. If you never do it, I would highly recommend that you start doing this stuff because your benefits will grow significantly. Let's look at some of the numbers. Actually, I don't have the numbers here. I thought I had my slide. But anyway, I can tell you people that have done benefits realization management, according to industry research, they actually achieve 3 times the benefits of organizations that don't, and that's across thousands of projects. So doing benefits realization management on projects, the payback is huge. So let's move on to kind of the last one, which is portfolio management. Portfolio management, its major goal is just to make sure that you choose the right projects that you're working on. If you're going to deliver business value and you have X amount of resources, it only makes sense, okay, that you have to choose the right projects. And you want to choose the projects that actually give you the highest return. Because if you have limited resources, you want to get the highest return you can for those resources. If you look at portfolio management, it's actually changing a lot. It's been around for like 10 or 12 years, and we used to call it PPM, Project Portfolio Management, and it used to kind of be much more in IT, okay? But really, project portfolio management is really much more than just projects. Generally, there is a project portfolio. There's oftentimes called a stakeholder portfolio, which is kind of managing your people. This is really happening a lot more if you hear this field called human capital management. You're actually tracking skills and people, and they're kind of viewing people like a major asset of the corporation, which they should. It's actually human capital, and it gets managed that way. Then there's the process portfolio, which is really big in this world called business process management. It's really managing your process portfolio and determining which ones need improvement, how are we going to get more efficiencies and more return really from that. And then there's the IT service portfolio, which is really becoming really big in ITSM. So it's kind of interesting because you're seeing all these portfolios pop up, and a lot of them kind of address the same thing. Even some of them, there's a lot of overlap, but there's really very little coordination. So this is really becoming a problem. So if you look at it, what you basically want to do when you manage any portfolio is you want to manage that portfolio for value. So there's kind of like 4 things you want to do. So you want to look at every project. You want to look at, okay, look at value number 1. Are the benefits of the project worth the effort and risk? Alignment. Do the projects contribute to the strategic goals of the company? If they don't, then you have a really hard time with success. It's really going to increase your risk. Okay, fit. Do we have the resources and skills to complete the project? And then really innovation. Are we willing to invest in something new? And if we do, will we gain a competitive advantage? Because this whole thing of managing the portfolio, it involves evaluation, optimizing, by rescoping, reclassifying, reassigning, and then basically monitoring the portfolio to make sure that we're actually achieving basic business value. It's kind of interesting because Gartner just did a study on portfolio management. And what they're really saying is that, okay, most organizations, they think they're going to be moving to what's called an enterprise portfolio management office. And so they're really beginning to emerge. what they're saying here is that there's really this real need to kind of merge these different portfolios. It's really a need to merge technology and business projects into the same organization. Okay, they said that this will really help in terms of helping align IT, okay, really with critical business objectives, and it will because it aligns the business projects and IT projects so they actually work together. Okay. However, since 2008, there's been a really high rate of PMO startup activity with an implementation failure rate of more than 50%. That's not too good. And what they're saying is that there's really no tools to really support, okay, kind of this enterprise portfolio management offices. And there'll be a lot of tools installed, but really they don't expect there to really be any successful tools out until 2014. So the bottom line is don't start a PMO unless it focuses on demonstrable results and business value versus process and administrative burdens. And that's really kind of where the organizations have failed. They got too tied down into adding administrative burden and not really focusing on business value. So the key takeaways for portfolio management is that, okay, PMOs will emerge to EPMOs. Okay, that'll merge IT and business portfolio silos together. So kind of the IT service portfolio management portfolio and traditional PMOs, and probably even a BA Center of Excellence, and probably even portfolios within the business. We're going to start seeing a lot of stuff kind of get merged together. Portfolio management will focus much more on delivering value and less on standardization of processes and administration in the future. And there will be a lot of tools starting to emerge. Okay, and business analysis skills will play a major role in realizing the potential benefits of the EPMO. We're actually seeing that that's kind of where BA Centers of Excellence will probably evolve to sometime 2 or 3 or 4 years from now. So let's go back. This is just kind of the summary slide. Let's look at this business value life cycle. It's kind of interesting. In terms of getting value, you really have to manage the portfolio. You have to manage your project delivery. Then you have to manage the benefits after. So portfolio management, its major thing is doing the right projects. That involves solution scoping, business cases, prioritizations, approval, and then really closing projects that are no longer important. Okay, and if you look at that, all those are basically business analysis tasks. The governance and things around portfolio management may not be, which is kind of this purple thing, but basically business analysis plays a major role really in that, and good business analysis skills can really help portfolio management and really help it achieve the value that it's supposed to and reduce this 50% failure rate. The project delivery is really doing projects right. That means requirements, and making sure those requirements are into design, build, test, and deploy. Okay, so that's kind of the heart of business analysis, and what it's focused on before is really the requirements. The main thing is, though, is that business analysts don't go away after the requirements are defined. They have to stay on and have to make sure that they get implemented properly into designs and they get built correctly and get deployed correctly. Then, of course, benefits realization is kind of after the fact, because its major thing is harvesting those benefits. That means to go back and making sure that after the solution's been deployed, we want to go back and measure and make sure that we achieve those benefits that were in the business case and evaluate and then continue to optimize. So you look at kind of these major disciplines. You have portfolio governance is kind of the purple. Project management kind of stays in this project delivery spot. And the business analysis is really kind of broad, because it really starts covering portfolio management, project delivery, and benefits realization. And of course, enterprise portfolio management kind of has to kind of address all these things all the way through. So now I want to cover a little bit about our product. We actually have our product's called the Focus Requirement Suite. Again, we are a comprehensive business analysis solution. We actually do a lot of things other than just requirements. We help you define the problem, prepare the business case, scope the solution. Pretty much everything I've talked about here, we actually do. Our software is really different than a lot of other solutions because we're not just software. We're actually a hosted solution. Okay, so it's a little software as a service. But we really realize that to be successful, you need a lot more than just a tool. You need a lot more than just automation. You basically kind of need a process. So what we do is we actually have, I hate to call it a methodology, I prefer to call it a framework, but okay, we actually have a requirements excellence framework that involves kind of 2 aspects. It really talks about what does business analysis need to do to be successful in projects to deliver business value, and then what do stakeholders need to do, and it's kind of like a whole set of tasks, okay, that need to be done. It's very, very consistent with VBOK, but it's much more organized and much more actionable in terms of how to apply it. The last thing we have in this requirement coach, which is training and uh, example requirements and example roadmaps and really things to help you really get started on various projects. So like master data management, we have like a master data management quick start guide or a business intelligence quick start guide, because each one of these things is quite a bit different in terms of really how you approach these projects. Okay, we do support industry best practices. If you took IBA's Baybach, which you heard me refer to a lot today, I will tell you our tool and our methodology addresses every single knowledge area and every single task, okay, that's within it. We made sure of that. In addition, we actually support a lot of other things that we monitor. We're very consistent with APQC's process classification framework, TOGAF in terms of architecture, ITIL, because we actually have kind of embedded services in the service catalog if you choose to use that. Okay, we definitely support collaboration. We actually have two different things. We have what's called the Requirement Pro, which is what a business analyst sees. We have a stakeholder portal license, which really allows a stakeholder to be involved in the project. It kind of gives them complete transparency. But they access the shared repository, and it really allows them to work together. So it allows them to, and it works very, very well. And if you take even agile projects, it works great. One of the big things is that product owners really struggle in terms of getting stakeholders involved in agile projects. This works really well because the business analyst can kind of be the central product owner. He can work with the teams that have to build the solution, and he can also work with stakeholders that have to populate this product backlog. And our tool handles that extremely well, as almost any type of waterfall project also. So like I said, our framework consists of these two perspectives. You're free to download these things on our website. One's called the business analysis perspective, and one's called the stakeholder perspective. But it's kind of like the whole methodology. So if you looked at our tool, it really follows this very closely. When you define a requirement in the tool, you actually define the requirement using patterns, because we realize you can actually do a lot better because they kind of ask you for certain pieces of information. So we have a lot of predefined patterns that are in the software that make you have more complete requirements and making sure that you're really capturing the right things. The requirement coach is interesting because we actually give you thousands or probably tens of thousands of sample requirements. So like, for instance, if you were trying to define general ledger requirements for an ERP system, we actually provide a whole set of requirements for that. We also provide KPIs for numerous industries. We have checklists and templates. We actually have a lot of information on how to benchmark, and we actually include benchmarking services. So really, in terms of the next steps, I would encourage everybody really just to visit our website. You can also contact our sales department if you want more information, or schedule a demo, or just talk to us, and or sign up for a free trial. But we do encourage you to select us. We'd like to be your business analysis partner. If you're trying to set up like a business analysis center of excellence, talk to us, and start maximizing business value through better business analysis. So now we're going to move really to questions and answers. I've got several questions here. Okay, the first one I want to cover is, okay, what type of ROI can we expect from better business analysis? Well, that one's a fun question to answer, but it really, I would have to say it depends. But let me just tell you, okay, as a CPA, I really want to be conservative, and I've actually helped a lot of organizations try to put this together. But generally, the ROIs are spectacular. In fact, they're almost unbelievable. In fact, generally in the range of 1,000 to 5,000%. Why is that? They're really good because there's less rework. And less rework, is normally 40% of the cost of a project. Of that, 70% is normally related to requirements. So of that, 28% of a project's cost is normally related to core requirements. If you can reduce that by any significant number, the return's unbelievable. Benefits realization, you actually receive 3 times the benefits. That's huge. Less waste. You can eliminate that 45% of functionality that's never developed. Gigantic. Okay, early delivery of high-value functionality by properly setting up features and prioritizing. That means the business receives the value quicker, which improves your net present value, which improves your returns significantly. And of course, if you can really just have higher project success rates, all of that contributes vast amounts to the return on investment. But anyway you want to compute it, your return on investment can be well into 1,000%, which almost sounds too good to be true. Okay, I think I covered this return. Okay, let's take the next one. Okay, here's a question. How can I say my business case will not be affected by other factors like political or environmental economic factors? Okay, I will say you cannot guarantee that it won't be affected. In fact, you could probably assume it will be affected. If you take a business case over a period of time, you have to really view, okay, that the business case is a living document, okay? So if the assumptions in the business case change, you need to document a change to your business case and document the assumptions of why it changed, and then show the impact that happens to the business case, plus or negative, okay? So the business case, even it needs to be more than just for funding. It needs to be used really to drive value from the business, and that's why, like I said, you anticipate that you're going to have political and environmental factors, but you definitely want to document, what the case is for that. Okay, here's another question. How are you differentiating business versus stakeholder requirements? Okay, business requirements, I'm actually going to just give you kind of the IBA's or BayBox definition. Okay, business requirements is what does the business expect to achieve from the system. So that would be such as we're going to increase revenues, we're going to cut cost, we're going to cut headcount or whatever, okay? That's normally like business benefits. Okay, stakeholder requirements are what do I need the system to do to help me perform my set of activities? Now, stakeholder requirements can also often conflict with other stakeholder requirements, and you have to kind of balance these things out. Okay, but that's normally, stakeholder requirements normally deal with, okay, how can I reduce my pain and how can I increase my gain? And oftentimes stakeholders, depending on who they are, they don't ever even see the revenue of a company. I mean, it sounds really good. We're going to increase our sales by 30%, okay? But if you're some accounts receivable clerk working in accounting, what do you care about that? You don't even see those numbers. All you really care about is how to make your job easier and reduce your frustration. So they actually are quite different. And stakeholder requirements, by the way, are, you don't really want them to be a wish list. So the best way is, like I said, to define those things in terms of scenarios and then have the business analyst break those into functional and non-functional requirements that somebody else can understand. Wow, we've got a lot of questions. Okay, how do we measure benefit realization based on the fact that we won't realize the benefit until sometime in the future? Okay, that is the point of benefit realization. Benefit realization actually starts after you've already implemented the solution. So it is true, so benefit realization goes on for a period of maybe 4 or 5 years, okay? And the best practice to do that is that you actually have benefits realization reviews. And so you take your measures that were defined, such as we're going to increase sales, we're going to reduce cost or whatever, or we're going to help these stakeholders achieve these benefits or whatever, and then you go back and measure those things. If you're not achieving that, then you determine what optimizations you need to make. So the benefits realization in terms of measuring them, believe me, that takes some effort to do, but the cost is astronomical. Because, I mean, the cost savings is huge because you're actually achieving these benefits you would have never achieved otherwise. Wow, a lot of questions. Okay, how does Infocus deal with quality assurance? Okay, I guess that kind of refers to our product. Okay, quality assurance, okay, it really kind of comes to different levels. So I'm going to assume that we mean testing here. Okay, we actually deal with that in terms of, we really view that testing is done. There's normally best practices to have, I guess that really depends. Okay, if you're on an agile project, okay, it's best to take your quality assurance resources and put them onto the agile team. Okay, if you're not that and you actually view system testing or integration testing as kind of a separate process, you have a separate organization that does that, okay, we really recommend that you use the requirements and that the quality assurance people actually use those requirements to actually build their test cases and scenarios. By having those requirements early and basically being able to build test cases and test scenarios early, it really helps even development, and it actually makes that process go much quicker. Oftentimes, too often, I've seen too many QA organizations, they don't even get requirements at all. They actually just get the system when it's ready to be tested and say, here, test this. Okay, well, that's not really what you want to do. The best practice is that QA should be involved very, very early in the project, and they should even review every requirement, because one of the things you want to validate is, are these requirements testable? So in terms of how we view it is, QA is a very integral part of the process. They're a key stakeholder just like development, and their job is to validate requirements to make sure they're testable, and then to use the requirements actually in their test process. Okay, how do you get your client to buy into your methodology and resource things appropriately? Great question. That's why I really hate to call our framework really a methodology, because of it really is more of a framework. It's really more of a guideline, okay, even though it does kind of give you the set of tasks or whatever. But the big thing is that you have to get anybody to buy into anything, okay, you really have to show them, okay, that it's going to help them. And so if people are frustrated and their projects are failing, or let's just take it from two perspectives. Take the stakeholder perspectives, and you can look at almost any study you want to. Stakeholders are very frustrated with IT. You can also look at any study, and IT is very frustrated with stakeholders. And most of it really kind of revolves around communications, okay? And this communications generally, we might call it organizational change or whatever, but it's really kind of broader than that. It's really just communications between these two groups of people that have different priorities, that talk different languages. So the big thing is to get people to buy in is to say, okay, look, stakeholders, you're really going to gain because you're going to have a lot better solution. You're going to have a solution that meets your needs. You're going to really have a say in how things are prioritized. But we need your input to be successful. How can we really know what you want unless you tell us? And of course, on the IT side, they buy into it, which is a little bit easier, because they would love to have good requirements that are clearly written where they can actually know what to build. Okay, new applications may be developed or purchased and customized. Does your tool have a template for procurement? The answer to that is our methodology has a whole section in there about procurement. We really realize that a lot of tools are purchased. They're not built. And so the answer is absolutely we will have that, and it's actually, we're working on it right now. But right now, our tool does not, but it probably will within 1 month. If you download our methodology, you'll actually see all of our stuff dealing with acquisition and evaluation of software and actually using the requirements for that. If you look on our blog, you'll actually see a lot of stuff really dealing with taking a requirement and determining whether the solution would actually be configuration or whether it would be customization. And those are very, very different in terms of purchase packages. That's one of the big things is that you define a set of requirements. Let's just take ERP or CRM. Both those areas I know pretty well. Just take ERP. If you take ERP, a lot of those projects failed because they never started out with a good set of requirements. And if they did start out with a good set of requirements, okay, they used it maybe for their selection process, but they never looked at them again. Wrong. Okay, if these requirements are really done well, they really reflect what the business needs are, those requirements need to basically get used to manage the whole ERP implementation. And things go a lot smoother if you do that. Now, what you do is you may change them. You may need to look at, okay, does this particular requirement, does it require a customization? If it does, okay, let's go back and evaluate it before we just assume we're going to customize the software. Because a lot of organizations, they don't want to customize, they basically want to just configure, which I really agree, that's the approach you should take. Sometimes it doesn't always work. But let's really make sure that we know what the business value is of both options, and let's use those requirements to do that. So, what we're really planning on doing is, and actually in our tool, now we already have this, you can look at, okay, what's my customization and configuration, whether that, and then what's my strategy in terms of how to do that? Great question. Okay, does the requirement management solution allow modeling in UML or BPMN, or at least store these for models? Okay, this is really my last question. I love this question. We do not have modeling tools built into our software. We do have attachments. And we actually give you complete guides to use in terms of how to visualize your requirements. We are very, very supportive of requirements visualization. But the thing is, there's about 15 different ways to do this. You can use UML, you can use business process modeling notation, or you can use value stream mapping notation, which I really like. I think it's in some ways maybe superior to BPMN. So yes, our system definitely allows for these things, and you can attach these things on as attachments, the models right onto requirements. You can attach them onto features. You can attach them at several levels, and they are available for stakeholders to view. and for business analysts to view. And we actually give you techniques of modeling techniques and give you a lot of explanations in terms of how that's done. So this concludes the seminar, and that's all the time I have for questions and answers, but I really appreciate everybody attending, and I hope you found this information very helpful. And good luck. I think in terms of if you'll apply some of the concepts that were presented, I think you can deliver a lot more value to your business.
Thank you, John, for a very informative presentation, and thank you everyone for attending today's Modern Analyst webinar. I wanted to point out the webinar along with the slides will be archived at modernanalyst.com within a few days. And this concludes today's event, and we hope you have a great day.